Let's get talking.
White people don't care if black people want to be left to their own devices, I promise you. It's so weird watching black people get mad at white people for starting functioning white communities. It's like, you know how happy we'd be to see black people start a functioning black community? Like, we would leave you to it. We would be, oh my goodness, good for you guys.
Wow, so not only are you dumb and uneducated and a bigot, you're also inefficient, because that was a lot of words to say. I'm a white supremacist and I'm okay with it. Let's talk about the history of white people just accepting black communities.
Hello, everybody. Hello. I thought I'd open up with a little bit of what we're talking about today. Hello, my name is Carl, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk with Carl E. Long, episode 44 of the podcast. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining me again. Well, this podcast, guys, is going to be a little bit alarming because I am alarmed. I am alarmed. I am worried. I am disgusted. I am angry. I am sad. And I also am hopeful that something's going to change. We haven't even been in a good year with this Trump administration, and it is so scary as to what's happening before our eyes, guys. What's happening before our eyes? There is a whitewashing going on before our eyes. And I feel like that we are just helpless and can't do anything about it. We have a man in the White House that has a military behind him, and a whole slate of soldiers will do anything to get his agenda passed. This makes me angry because of the whole voting thing that happened. This man got voted in. I still believe he cheated somehow, because I just don't believe the American people would turn their heads and allow what's happening to America to happen. So today's episode, guys, is the erosion of trust, how the Trump administration manipulates America. And that's true. He has manipulated the whole fabric of this country into believing he's the go all win all of everything. And I mean, it's so crazy that it's funny that this is actually happening. This is actually happening. So we need to talk about Donald Trump. Yeah, we need to talk about Donald Trump's latest post on Truth Social. Now, this one just came up, how he's targeting the Smithsonian museums, claiming they're out of control. Trump actually posted this. He says that the Smithsonian focuses only how bad slavery was and the struggle of the downtrodden, which is not true. I've been to the African American Museum in Washington, D.C., and I saw all of the triumphs and everything else that blacks have contributed to. And quite frankly, I was so proud to even go in there to show the struggles that we've had and what we've been overcome and become. It's a long journey, but it's a beautiful museum. And for him to take this and what he's getting ready to do and gut things is a travesty to us as people. And I don't like it. Yeah. Okay, so Trump argues there's nothing about success, there's nothing about brightness, and nothing about the future. He has even instructed his attorneys to review the museum exhibits. Now, this all comes on the heels of his March executive order restoring truth and sanity to American history. We don't need you to restore anything, Donald Trump. You don't decide what's historical. You don't do that. You're just a man that was elected president, and you're supposed to run this country. You're not our king. You're not our savior. You're none of that. Actually, you're nothing to me at this point, because this one right here, this is the worst thing ever. So he put that order. He put Vice President Vance in charge of the Smithsonian Boards of Regents in the change of removing what the White House is calling divisive race-centered ideology. Yeah, that's what he's calling it. So let's be clear. The Smithsonian is made up of 20 museums, if you don't know that, and galleries, plus the National Zoo. Yes, the National Museum of African American History and Culture covers slavery. It does. But it also highlights black excellence in science, in art, music, sports. It's a beautiful thing if you've never been there. It's a beautiful thing. I was so proud and so freaking proud when I went to it. It just made me feel like, oh my God, I'm so proud. I'm so proud to be a black American. Now, the mission of these museums has always been to preserve the full scope of American history, both the painful truths and the incredible achievements. So, why is he messing with the Smithsonian, guys? Do y'all know what this is all about? This goes back to the thing I always say about white fragility. They don't want to own up to anything. They want this lily white deal. Well, the great American white man has provided everything for everybody, and all of us should be happy and go lucky. It ain't happening, buddy. It's not going to happen. Not in my lifetime. So historians and musician organizations, they're alarmed. You know, the organization of Americans calls Trump's orders unprecedented. Yeah. The American Museum Alliance of Museums warned that political interference risks narrowing our view of history. And PEN America has gone further, saying this is an attempt to rewrite history and a betrayal of democratic tradition. What is the reason he's doing this, guys? This man so much wants to be loved and adored and feet kissed and everything. No. You're not even a nice human being, Donald Trump. Why would anybody want to do that? And everybody keeps stroking this man, even the European leaders. Like, you got to stroke him to get what you want. I don't like people like that. And I definitely like a president like that. I'm not stroking you for nothing. You have a job to do. Do it. Do it, Donald Trump. This has got me so upset, I don't know. So what's the bigger picture here? The bigger picture is this is part of a broader culture war strategy. You know, Trump has already targeted the diversity programs in universities and what he calls woke ideology. You know, now he's reaching into museums. The very institutions that protect our cultural memory. Museums. So, memory, museums, history, he's trying to get rid of it. What are you going to do with it? Just take it down? Never to be talked about again? You're going to make some executive order that we're no longer to talk about white supremacy and slavery anymore? No. Now, civil rights advocates argue that this isn't about unity. It's about erasing uncomfortable truths. I know it's uncomfortable to talk about slavery, but the reason we're still talking about it because you guys really haven't dealt with it. We've slept on a couple of few laws in the books. People have progressed a little bit. We don't have slaves anymore. At least we don't think we do, you know, because it went from slaves to just having slave labor. So it took you a little while to decide to let us go. Yeah. So you basically gave us slavery back with Jim Crow and everything else after Reconstruction. Yeah, you did. The chain gangs. Y'all were arresting people for any and everything and putting them back into the fields. You did. So here's the question we have to ask ourselves. Do we want museums to be cheerleaders of a sanitized national story? Or do we want them to be honest custodians of history, warts and all? Because when we lose control of our history, we lose control of our democracy. That's where we are today. That's where we are today on that part. So, that's where we are today. So I just want you to listen to what kind of started this whole thing. I don't know if it started or not, but what kind of spurred it is Abby Foster. Abby Phillip has a show that I love, a roundtable show. Sometimes I love it, sometimes I don't like it. And she had Jillian Michaels. She was from The Biggest Loser. She was one of the coaches. I never liked her when she was on there, so now I know why. Now she's a MAGA podcaster and loyalist. And she's got some interesting statistics on what she thinks about slavery. Is basically she's saying that it wasn't enough people that owned slavery for us to be a big deal in this country. I was like, that got me pissed off very quickly. So listen to this video from Abby, and we'll come back.
White people don't care.
All right, let me go to this one.
Jillian Michaels, the former star of The Biggest Loser and now a MAGA influencer, was on Newsnight last week, and we were having a discussion on the show about Trump's attempts to influence parts of American culture, like the Smithsonian, like the Kennedy Center, and the arts, when suddenly the conversation turned to slavery and race, and Jillian argued that everything in the culture has become now about race.
He's not whitewashing slavery.
So he's not?
He's not. No,
okay.
he's not. And you cannot tie imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race, which is pretty much what every single exhibit does.
Then what really shocked all of us at the table was that she seemed to try to be minimizing the impact of racism and slavery on American history.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans owned slaves?
But it was a system of white supremacy.
You realize that slavery is thousands of years old?
White people were
Do you know
the slave
who
owners.
was the first race to try to end slavery?
That's an incredibly misleading statistic, because even the Americans who did not own slaves also participated in slavery by benefiting from the economic system of slavery, the political system of slavery, and culturally treating black people as if they were not human. But Jillian didn't acknowledge any of those things, and that, I think, is really what shocked so many of us at the table. Since then, she's doubled down, and she's even said that she had reached out to the White House before coming on the show to ask them about which Smithsonian exhibits they wanted to dispute. She acknowledged that none of the talking points provided by the White House, according to her, had to do with slavery, and yet she still decided to downplay it at the Newsnight table. Fast forward a couple of days later, and now President Trump is actually also downplaying slavery, suggesting that the Smithsonian talks about it too much and overemphasizes the negative of slavery in the context of American history. Here's the truth. Slavery in the United States was about race. It was about white supremacy, and it was really, really bad. Now, Jillian, like many other voters, is entitled to her opinion. She's just not entitled to her own facts.
So, yeah, Jillian, she was the one that I saw this live. And when she said that, do you know there's only 2% of people that own slaves? You know what? I don't care how many own them. You got the benefits of it. The whole system, whether you owned it or not, rich people own slaves. If you didn't have one, too bad you didn't have one. But you still treated them like they were slaves. You benefited from the whole system. The whole system. So to say that, she's basically, and then she kept saying, bad white people, bad white. Yes, pretty much. There are plenty of bad white people that colonize this entire nation. This nation, the world. So yes, Jillian Michaels, bad white people. There were. And you think for some miraculous day that all of a sudden, poof, they're gone and we're all equal now. Bull crap. I call that. That's what I call that. And she kept trying to make these points with these statistics and whatever, like bad white people. So basically her point is just this. We are trying to make all white people be the ones that have to be responsible for what happened with white supremacy. And her point is that everybody shouldn't have to deal with this. That's pretty much what she's saying. And the sinister look that was on her face when she was trying to explain this doesn't even tells you nothing but this is a lady that's filled with hate, and she's trying to mask it as something else through statistics. And I'm just kind of sick of racists right now. I'm really sick of racist people. I don't want nothing to do with them. I want them to just shut up. I just do. It's just really getting to a point now where this is getting crazy. It really is. So listen to this on slavery in America. And I think this is coming from Joy Reid. Yes.
Every single person in America should watch this. And especially those whose actual expertise is exercise and caffeine pills, not slavery. Roll them.
Hey y'all, I do not usually do these videos, but as a creator of the 1619 Project and someone who has studied the history of slavery for 3 decades, I could not let that viral CNN clip of Jillian Michaels stand. I have to first state that the times are far too serious and dangerous for us to lend our platforms to harmful nonsense. It's simply irresponsible, with everything that's happening in this country, to have someone as credentialless as Jillian Michaels on a major network show legitimizing the erasure of our history. Now, I know there have been some viral efforts to debunk her claim that somehow slavery was a side institution in the United States because less than 2% of white people owned slaves. But even those efforts, while valiant, by embracing this right-wing framing, they still aren't really getting to it. You see, this is how numbers and data, though technically true, can also be lies. And this is why we can't let bad faith actors set the parameters of the debate or of our collective understanding. So please bear with me because this is a lot. Let's take the fewer than 2% of white people own slaves at face value, though we know that number is technically incorrect. And let's apply that standard to any other industry. What percentage of Americans own social media companies or technology companies such as Apple? It's a tiny percentage. I'm doubtful if it's even 1% of Americans. And yet no one would credibly argue that social media companies are not ubiquitous across American life, that they don't play a major influence on our political, social, and economic life in America. And in fact, what we know is that more than 70% of Americans use social media, though hardly any Americans own social media platforms. There's a reason that the heads of Meta, Apple, and Amazon, Google, and X all took part in Trump's inauguration festivities, with several of them standing on the actual dais during Trump's inauguration. These men also happen to be amongst the wealthiest in the world and demonstrate how a small cadre of super wealthy men can have an outsized impact on American politics and culture. This is just critical thinking, y'all. So if we want to play the numbers game, the much more important measure is what percentage of Americans own slaves? No, but what percentage of those empowered did? So here we go. Before 1865, the end of slavery in the United States, 63% of U.S. presidents had been slave owners at some point in their lives. More than 1,800 members of Congress owned slaves, meaning between 1789 and 1819, more than half of the men elected to Congress each session were slave owners. What about the Supreme Court? 26 of this nation's first 30 Supreme Court justices were enslavers, and about half of all the Supreme Court justices before the Civil War were enslavers. So many Supreme Court justices were enslavers that if we added up all the Supreme Court justices coming all the way to this present court, 1 out of 4 of all Supreme Court justices in this nation's history were enslavers. I mean, let's just look at our money. All but one of the people on our cash currency engaged in African slavery. Look at the $1 bill, $2 bill, 10, 20, 50, 100. All these men engaged in slavery. It's weird that we didn't value all those non-slave holding white people enough to put them on our money. The majority of the most powerful men in this country, the men who made the federal laws, interpreted the laws, and enforced the laws, built their wealth on African slavery. And I assure you, that number says much more about the country we inhabit than that 2%. But let's not stop there, because even limiting the boundaries of the conversation to those who owned other human beings is highly misleading. Much like technology today, slavery in the United States was a national endeavor that undergirded not just our political system, but our entire economy. During the height of slavery, it was not the Northeast, Boston or New York, but the Mississippi River Valley in the Deep South that had more millionaires per capita than anywhere in the nation. And the Confederacy, had it succeeded at being a separate country, would have been the fourth richest nation in the world when the Civil War started. Enslaved people in the U.S. produced 7/8 of the world's cotton supply, and slave-grown cotton constituted 50% of all U.S. exports, making it the #1 export in America. And the North was completely intertwined in slavery, so much so that at the start of the Civil War, New York City actually considered seceding from the Union because the economy of the nation's trade capital was so heavily reliant on slavery. White enslavers financed their operations through New York banks, protected their enslaved property through New York insurance companies, and transported their slave-grown cotton on New York ships, flooding $200 million into New York's economy every year. Enslaved people built the famous wall that Wall Street is named after. Famous companies such as Lehman Brothers are rooted in slavery. The Lehman Brothers began as cotton brokers in Alabama before moving to New York to help establish the New York Stock Exchange. Brooks Brothers made not only fine suits, but slave cloth outfits to clothe the enslaved. Domino Sugar dominated based on slave-grown sugar. As a result, by some estimate...
All right, I'm going to stop it right there because she goes on for another 3 minutes explaining to you what all rich people did in America and how slavery has been inbred into our culture. And for her to come back, Jillian Michael, and say only 2%, it doesn't matter. 2% of the people in are billionaires, but how much of an influence do they have on the entire country? Enormous. Amazon, we all deal with it, right? Yes. So that was a stupid thing to say, Jillian. So let me just read this. Play this other one's here from this other guy who debunks her claim as well. So let's do this one here. Slave owners in America.
All right, so anyone surfing social media this week has surely seen this clip of Jillian Michaels saying this about slavery.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans own slaves?
And while she didn't name a specific year in her claim on CNN, she did tweet this out later saying, "I'm denigrating all of humanity by pointing out that 98% of American white people in 1860 didn't perpetrate slavery." But let's take a look at this claim. Because yes, as the data shows, in 1860, there were 393,975 slave owners in the United States out of a total population of 31,183,582, or just 1.26% of the population. But let's take a closer look at that, because by taking a look at this map from 1860 of the percent of households that owned slaves at the time, we can see that slavery was no longer practiced in the North and was only practiced down here in the South. And so yeah, if we eliminate those 18 free states and only concentrate on the remaining 15 slave states, you can see we get that same amount of slave owners that now have a population of just 12 million. That's almost 19 million off of the original number, which gets us to 3.22% of the population owning slaves. And so yeah, if we eliminate those 18 free states and only concentrate on the remaining 15 slave states, you can see we get that same amount of slave owners that now have a population of just 12 million. That's almost 19 million off of the original number, which gets us to 3.22% of the population owning slaves. But here's another problem. If we just look at the U.S. slave states in 1860, we can see that in the slave column here, we have almost 4 million slaves. And because they can't own themselves, we gotta minus them out too. And so if we remove them, we get 8.2 million with the same amount of slave owners. And now that number jumps up to 4 4.75% of the free population of these 15 states. But if we focus on just those 11 states that decided to secede from the United States in order to protect slavery, that percentage gets even bigger. So if we add up just the Confederate States, we get 316,632 slave owners and 5,582,222 people, meaning that now 5.67% of the free population own slaves. But again, this 5.67 number only deals with the patriarch of a family who actually owns those slaves, not the wife and children who stood to inherit them when he died. So if we take a look at that number, we can see that 30.8% of the free families in the Confederacy owned slaves, and that number was as high as 49% in a state like Mississippi. And that's why, Jillian, it's important to teach slavery to our school children, to know how it started, how it progressed, and what states decided to fight a war to keep it. I mean, there is zero evidence to say if these 11 states had beaten the North in the Civil War that they would have ever ended slavery. It was an economic advantage that they didn't want to let go of. And that's why it's no secret that when you take a look at the map of people that owned slaves in 1860 and compare it to the map of the states that decided to fight a war over slavery, and then compare it to a map of the violence that was brought against black people in the 10 years after Jim Crow laws were adopted in the South, and then compare it to a map of the segregation that existed all the way into the 1950s and the 1960s, it's clear that the same culture that was committed to slave ownership decades after other American states gave it up maintained that culture in those same states more than a century later. This is a picture from 1965 of a woman and her daughters. And that's why it's important to teach all history, Jillian, not just cherry pick certain percentages when they work for your argument. We need to teach kids everything and let them figure it out for themselves.
All right, so another person debunked her little claim. I still can't believe she said that. I'm going, is this happening? So the next day, Abby had a round table, and they discussed the slavery and what Jillian Michaels said and whatever. And they were still trying to justify numbers and what Donald Trump is trying to do as far as whitewashing the museums and the whole bit and taking slavery out. And they were still trying to say, and then Batia, who is she comes on Abby a lot. She always comes with statistics, okay? So she has all these numbers and saying that the reason why Donald Trump is trying to do this because there became a rise in certain terms and words, and she called it the progressive left. The white progressive left had this interest in white supremacy and was trying to, and all of a sudden they were interested in it and they were abusing it or whatever. But here's what's happened, dear Batia. What's happened is why there's a rise in words. So she went through and she counted. The Washington Post mentioned white supremacy this many times. The New York Times mentioned it this many times. And she was comparing it to one year and another. You know what you're comparing that to? What I compare that to? It's not the fact that it wasn't there. What you're comparing that to is we weren't talking, but now we're talking. Makes sense? She's comparing us. So Abby called her good. So you're trying to compare back when we were in Jim Crow South, when we couldn't do anything. They weren't using the words, but there's been a rise now. So that's supposed to have been a good thing? Well, no, I'm not saying. Well, yeah, you did. You pretty much are saying that there's been a rise in words being used and printed. White supremacy, slavery, DEI, whatever. All these words are being used. But you know what that is? I'll say it again, dear Batia. It is people are starting to talk about it. And we need to. Until we have the conversation about race in America, it's never going to change. It's going to be a nasty conversation. But somebody's going to sit down and listen. Listen, comprehend, and understand. Some of you will never get it. Because it's so inbred and bound in your head about, racism and the whole bit. Some of you will never get it, but who knows? Yeah. So that's where we are with the whole thing on slavery in America. And I cannot believe that Trump tweeted that out. He tweeted or whatever he did, social posted it out about going through the Smithsonian and removing anything about slavery, so to speak. That scares me, guys. That really does alarm and scare me. So, this is where we are. So, in the other part of this whole podcast today,
All right, so anyone
is that, let me stop that. I'm sorry. Is we're talking about something bigger than politics. We're talking about trust. Trust in numbers. Trust in the truth. And trust in institutions that keep our democracy honest. Trump is messing with this stuff. Yeah. It's like on the economy. This bad. On the economy, under Trump administration, we've seen a direct attack on the integrity of our economic data. You know, just in August, President Trump fired the head of the Bureau of Labor, right? Simply because the jobs report showed lower growth and large downward revisions in previous month. No evidence of wrongdoing, no scandal, just numbers he didn't like. And now he's nominating an ideological guy who has called official job numbers phony. And who wants to stop releasing, the monthly jobs report data altogether. He wants to just stop it. So this isn't about improving accuracy. It's about controlling the story. Even if it means hiding the truth from the American people. Hiding the truth on crime statistics is the same playbook being used on crime. So Trump has put all this National Guard in Washington, D.C. and declared a national emergency. This is why everybody's afraid of this guy. Because as long as he's the executive in charge of this country, the military pretty much has to do whatever he says. Because he's in charge of the military as well. So we have a problem. So Trump has ordered these people in Washington. Now, I'll say this about some cities. Some cities are scarier than others, and you don't walk in them, but it's not into a point where, you need a National Guard there. Yeah, so ordering a federal takeover of police department and deploying hundreds of National Guard troops. His reason, he claimed violent crime was out of control. You know what his reason was? One of the Doge staffers, I think that's the one they called Big Joe or something. He had a crazy name. He was jumped and basically I think they stole his truck or something like that. So now Trump is sending out the cavalry. Where was the cavalry when all these little black kids were getting killed? Where was the outrage? Where was the cavalry? Where was it? I'll give you a few minutes. Where was it? Okay? That's just what I'm telling you here. Oh, God. So, there are no rules anymore. Trump makes up anything. Everybody just goes with it. The only time they raised a little brow, though, was the stupid Epstein files, which is weird. That's just weird to me. So now let's listen to the next one here about how one of the TikTokers has decided that Donald Trump has no plans to leave this office. Let me let you hear that.
The president? He's not leaving that White House. Not now, not ever. And if you think he had any intention of walking out on January 20th with a smile and a wave, you haven't been paying attention. We're not even a year in, and he has already laid the groundwork, brick by brick, step by step. And that tired little counterpoint of he can't do that or he's not gonna do that, it's dead, buried, 6 feet under. He's already shown you exactly who he is, a man willing to send an armed mob to attack Congress just to hold on to power. Look at the record. 7 months. That's all it's been. He has now attempted to suspend habeas corpus. He has defied court orders. He has absolutely dismantled entire government agencies, targeting the legal community, universities, the arts, the free press. You want to write those off as presidential power moves? Fine. but then explain the rest. The Rose Garden, gutted and paved over to look like a Mar-a-Lago parking lot. The 90,000 square foot ballroom, which will sit where the East Wing is now as nothing but a monument to his own vanity. The ICE budget is now bloated beyond belief, and it is bigger than the militaries of entire countries. And who do you think commands those officers? He controls those officers. So what do you think that means for anyone that tries to remove him from office? That's no longer just an army to enforce immigration laws. That is a private army at the disposal of the President of the United States. He has now seized control of DC. He is flooding the streets with federal law enforcement officers, and he has now deployed the National Guard. Call it what you want, I will call it what it is. Fortification. He is fortifying the city. Any protest, any resistance will be met with brutal, crushing force. His brutal, crushing force. This authoritarian streak, this is what we warned you about, because now he is seizing every executive power he can get his hands on, and he is squeezing it dry. Now, on top of all of that, thanks to the 2024 Supreme Court ruling in Trump v. United States, he has total criminal immunity from any acts that he commits while he is president. So tell me this, now that he has the power, he has the courts, he has the military, he has the Capitol itself in his grip, what makes you think he's gonna leave?
That's a scary little thought, little man, that he's going to leave. But he's kind of setting himself up for something. He's not doing this for the next president, I know. This man will walk in there and end up getting something that's, I mean, this is just, oh God, you allow so much stuff. I don't know why you allow this, but we'll figure that out. Okay, so let's listen to MSN's Claude on the DC deployment, on what he's saying about it as well.
Donald Trump is not sending troops to Washington, D.C. because he cares about crime. And I think it's an egregious mistake to debate the issue of whether or not it is beneficial for Washington, D.C. We need to understand the authoritarian power grab here. And the way in which he's using, right, a predominantly African-American city to stoke grievances and hatreds, right, and to engage in the power grab and to push the Epstein story off the front page.
Okay. That was Dear Claude from MSNBC. Yes. All right. So let's go to another clip here on Trump's corrupt intent. Here we go.
So Bill Barr just gave an interview to The Atlantic, and he said some things that are going to help sink Donald Trump. Frankly, he said some things that ain't so great for Bill Barr either. Let's talk about that. Because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So former Attorney General Bill Barr gave an interview to The Atlantic, and some of the revelations in that interview are staggering. Let me hit three of the highlights. We should call them lowlights, contained in that article. The first one is that Bill Barr calls Donald Trump's claims of election fraud, quote, bullspit, close quote. And yes, I did change one letter of the word. The second thing I want to talk about is that Bill Barr provides direct evidence of Donald Trump's corrupt intent, his guilty knowledge, his criminal mens rea. Information that will be extremely valuable to, among others, the prosecutors in Georgia who are investigating Donald Trump for that criminal phone call he placed. You've heard the recording where he's asking Georgia state election officials to, find me around 11,000 votes so I can be wrongfully declared the winner in Georgia. Well, Bill Barr relates some direct statements by Donald Trump that provide evidence of his guilty knowledge, his corrupt intent, his criminal mens rea. And then the third thing, which I didn't see coming, was Bill Barr colluded with Mitch McConnell to try to defeat Ossoff and Warnock in the Georgia Senate races. But let's start with the Atlantic article itself. The headline reads, "Inside William Barr's breakup with Trump. In the final months of the administration, the doggedly loyal Attorney General finally had enough." And Bill Barr spoke directly with the author of this article, Jonathan Karl, and regarding claims of election fraud that Donald Trump was making incessantly, Bill Barr said, quote, "It was all bull spit," close quote. Again, I changed one letter there.
So there's a cavalcade, guys. Listen to this one here on black women who never fell for Trump. Listen, here we go.
What I'm about to say, I say with the deepest possible conviction in my heart. Never in the 400-year history of black women being put down and stepped on and stepped over in this country have white people, and white Christians in particular, taken a stand for them. Not once. I mean, our vote, our political participation seems to be designed to inflict maximum damage on them. And we literally chose a criminal sexual predator straight out of the Epstein files over being led by a black woman. Black women are some of the strongest, most educated, most compassionate people who consistently saw Trump for who he was and warned us about him over and over, and we didn't listen. And now they're sitting this one out. And of all of the things, of all of the warning signs and alarm bells that are going off all around us right now, this one scares me the most. Because if they're out, God have mercy on us as a nation.
God has mercy on us as a nation. So, even though the rate of in the high city, the violent crime was down, but here's the truth. The official Justice Department data shows violent crime in D.C. down. Dropped more than 30% last year, and murder rates are far below the peaks of the early 90s. Even his own FBI director, Trump, said the national murder rate is on track to be the lowest in modern history. So that's the pattern. So the facts don't match. And we just need to find out why. The facts don't match. And he promises to release his own stats, handpicked to tell the story he wants. Why it matters, this isn't just about numbers on the page. It's about whether we can trust the government to tell us the truth. If we can't believe our economic data, and if we can't rely on our crime statistics, we can't make good policy, and we can't hold our leaders accountable. In a democracy, the truth is not a partisan issue. It's the foundation of every decision we make as a people. And when leaders start rewriting reality to fit their own needs, that foundation starts to crack. It's our job, yours and mine, to protect democracy. So many of those things are already happening with Donald Trump, already happening. So he's talking to Putin now, and Putin tells him, you need to turn off that mail-in voting because you'll never get the results that you want with this mail-in voting. And I'm like, he's taking leadership advice from Vladimir Putin? Oh my goodness. This is scary, guys. Very, very scary. Okay. So let's listen to Jasmine Crockett. She speaks about gerrymandering in the Texas House.
Hey y'all. So let's chat for a second. There's so much going on, and I gotta make sure that we talk about a few things. So I was having an issue with my signal before, so just want to make sure. Yep, I'm starting to see y'all come in. Absolutely wonderful. All right. So, as y'all know, me and Lil Donnie, we don't get along. And y'all know that, he really has, this little ego issue. And so when there is somebody that pushes back, fights back, he absolutely loses his mind. So, just to be clear, I'm not going to stop being who I am, because it's just how God made me, and so it is what it is. But y'all know how he was like going after different people that are on TV and wanting them to lose their jobs, and unfortunately some may have lost their jobs because of him and his threats and his bullying. Well, that's not how I get my job. I get my job from the people of Texas 30. So, of course, you know, we're dealing with this whole redistricting fight in the state of Texas, but like, I've made it clear that so long as I plan to go back to the house, I'll go back to the house. Like, I'm going to go back to the house. Like, I'm going to fight, I'm going to work, I'm going to go back to the house. Like, it is what it is. Like, because I believe in the people that I serve. I believe in the relationship that I have built with my constituents. I believe in the work that we just have been doing, whether it is providing direct services to constituents, or whether we're talking about being their voice, or whether we're talking about the types of legislation. Okay, hopefully I'm back. Sorry, y'all. I'm in a place that does not have the best signal. Okay, so I'm gonna try to finish this up really quickly. So once Donald realized that he can't fire me by any means, because I don't work for him, I work for the people at Texas 30. And of course, like, I'm not like paid to do TV or anything like that. He has decided to sick his little media people out on me, and to make up all kinds of lies and all of the nonsense. It is what it is. As soon as y'all see something that sounds stupid, especially coming from certain sources, y'all already know what it is. Like, we not finna play like this. Like, y'all not crazy. And so, yeah, I got news for him. If I want to be in the house, I'll absolutely be in the house. And there ain't nothing he can do about it. I'm sorry. But Don, you got to put up with me. Okay? Okay. That's all I wanted to say. I pray y'all are doing well. We are still on August recess. I am finally situated for 2 days in a row, because I've been on planes every single day since last Thursday, sometimes 2 planes a day. And I'm going to keep working. No matter what happens, we have to remain hopeful. We have to understand that they are afraid of our power, and the more ridiculousness that they pull, the more committed we must be in this moment to making sure that the whole reason they're afraid of us, we show up and make them regret the day that they tried to play with us. That is the mood for the rest of 2025. It's going to be the mood until we kick them out of these seats in 2026. And we need to go ahead and carry this mood until 2028, when we take back over everything. And ultimately, when the Democrats take everything back over, we got to make sure that the Democrats are going to be just as aggressive as the Republicans have been at harming people to help people. No matter what it takes, we have to make sure that we are protecting people in case we end up with another evildoer that ends up in office. We cannot allow ourselves to go down this road again. We have to make sure that we fortify these systems and make sure that they start to work for everybody. We never, ever need to be in a situation like this again. So I love y'all. I just wanted to let y'all know. I guess Donald went the way that he always likes to go, because we have it on good authority that he just calls up his little media people and tell them to talk noise about me. So anyway, talk to y'all later.
Her hair, nails, feet, she did the finger thumb type and said Glock it.
So that was Dear Jasmine. You know, I always have to have her on just to talk about what's going on with the gerrymandering and the whole bit of what is happening in this Trump administration. So let's see, something else that Trump is doing, returning those darn statues. Listen to this.
Of a post-Reconstruction time where the Confederate battle flag is adopted, where the Ku Klux Klan arises and comes to power, all for one reason. And these monuments and these people are romanticized all for one reason, to control and terrorize black people.
That's right.
So moving away from those monuments, from celebrating those people, is actually a strong sign of actual reconciliation, that we don't want black people to live in fear of racial terror and slavery anymore. And to repower those things and those images is saying, it's to me, saying the opposite of that. But here's the difference. I'm not about to cry over the statue. You know why? Because we're not scared no more. We're not afraid. We never really were. We're not afraid of statues. We're not afraid of the cultural terrorists. Our eyes are wide open in terms of what America means for us. And if the president and his administration want to cozy up to the worst parts of American history, we see them. Point blank, period.
But they should be asked why they're okay with it.
Of a post-reconstruction.
Yep. So they want to put back these really offensive statues. Now let's just talk about history, because I know that in one light y'all might be saying, well, you want us to preserve the slavery stuff, which was not good, but you don't want us to just preserve the Confederate stuff. The difference is, guys, yes, we can have a total Confederate museum. I would go to see what kind of craziness that went on there. A museum, I would go. We have a black African-American museum that does our whole experience. But what statues do, statues are built to celebrate heroes and milestones in America that were good, right? Or people that gave their lives for good, right? So anything that's out there that's derogatory against another group of people is not good. So there shouldn't be a statue. They need to be in a museum. Go to the museum. Be in the Confederate Museum all you want. You can have all your stuff there. White flags and everything. Have at it. I would go. So that's the difference. And then returning these, it's just a slap in the face on all this stuff, guys. It really is. And it just makes it very corrupt on people in America. It's just not right. Now, I'll play a little clip for the beginning that's what I'm saying, the education is key. There's this guy, and he seems to think, and listen to what he says, and the white sister comes behind him, and she corrects him like crazy. So let's listen to this. Tell me what you think.
White people don't care if black people want to be left to their own devices, I promise you. It's so weird watching black people get mad at white people for starting functioning white communities. It's like, you know how happy we'd be to see black people start a functioning black community? Like, we would leave you to it. We would be, oh my goodness, good for you guys.
Wow, so not only are you dumb and uneducated and a bigot, you're also inefficient, because that was a lot of words to say I'm a white supremacist and I'm okay with it. Let's talk about the history of white people just accepting black communities. 1873, Colfax, Louisiana. White mobs murdered 150 black men who were defending a Reconstruction era form of government, and it was a coup to seize political power away from black residents. 1898, Wilmington, North Carolina. White mobs overthrew the multiracial city government and then slaughtered dozens of black families and burned down their businesses. 1910, Slocum, Texas. White mobs attacked a prosperous black farming community out of racial and economic resentment, killed dozens, forced the survivors to flee, and stole their land. 1912, Forsyth County, Georgia. After a false rape allegation, white mobs terrorized and expelled all of the black residents, forcing those survivors to flee, and then seized their land and homes and redistributed it to a white community. And then in 1919, in Elaine, Arkansas, hundreds of black sharecroppers were murdered by white mobs and federal troops after they organized a union to demand fair wages. And in 1920, in OK, Florida, black citizens were massacred and their town was burned to the ground after they attempted to vote in a presidential election. And then in 1921 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, one of the wealthiest black communities that has ever existed was destroyed in a 2-day massacre where 35 blocks were destroyed and burned to the ground, and hundreds of black residents were killed. And then in 1923 in Rosewood, Florida, a self-sufficient black town was annihilated by white mobs after a false accusation, and survivors never could return. 1943 in Detroit, Michigan, racial tensions over housing and jobs, does that sound familiar, led to a deadly riot in which black neighborhoods were destroyed by law enforcement. And then in 1967, also in Detroit, Michigan, an uprising sparked by a police brutality incident was met with military force. They sicked the military on the black neighborhoods, killing 43.
All right. Well, she goes on and on to more. So the little white guy was asking the question. He would be happy to see if we would just try. We have tried. There are very many more examples, too, of freeways that went through our cities and whatever else. Whenever we tried to do our own thing, left you alone, you got jealous and you came over and destroyed it. That's the story. Morning glory. That's the story. So, if you want to know why I don't trust this, I just don't trust this administration. I don't trust them. So there is an erosion of trust here with the American people. We don't know what to believe anymore. I mean, sometimes I don't know what to do or answer questions all the time on different issues, but I know how I feel, and I know what feels like right and what feels like wrong. And we got a lot of stuff that's wrong right now going on in America. Okay. All right. So, I want y'all to listen to this one guy here. Listen to him. He says Trumpism has no future. He's very optimistic, but let's listen. Here we go.
Despite all I've tried to tell you, I still get a lot of feedback from people along the lines of, but they're not following the law, nobody's holding them accountable, all is lost, democracy is over, the Constitution is dead. I don't know how many ways I can tell you you are wrong, but you are wrong. You don't understand how any of this works. When you put a felon in the White House and they start committing crimes, it takes a little bit longer to bring them to justice than it would if you or I were committing those same crimes. The president gets his day in court. The government gets to argue that what they're doing is in the national interest and so on and so forth. But they've been doing that and they have been losing consistently everywhere. Trump's only hope now is that the Supreme Court will come back from recess and announce that the Constitution is dead and it's over and Trump is the king. That is not going to happen. Even his own supporters that he put on the court, who are appointed for life, know that if they were ever to say that, they would lose their own positions and their own jobs. They are not going to hand Trump the keys to the entire republic. Neither do we have to let them dictate how society is going to be. None of us has to put up with this, all right? Let me just give you a little piece of legal advice that you can employ in your own day-to-day. Being a Trumper is not a protected class. There is no law against any form of discrimination against a Trumper. Any form. You don't have to hire them, you don't have to rent to them, you don't have to do business with them, you don't have to be friends with them, you don't have to be nice to them, so on and so forth. We can have the kind of society we want. The Constitution protects civilization, it protects a civil society, and a bunch of hillbillies are not going to destroy that, not unless you panic and let them. The Constitution is still on. Our republic is still going to function. We are going to survive and finish with Trump. Trump is going to end up in prison exactly where he belongs, and so will the people supporting him. But you have got to stay the course and not panic and not play into their hands.
Boy, that brother is very optimistic. He's very optimistic. I listened to him. He says, don't worry about it. It's coming. Okay, I'm going to listen to him. I'm hoping something happened. I am hoping something happened. Yes. So we shall see. I'll stay just as positive as he is there. Yeah. Okay. So, what I was just talking about was wealth, black wealth, and how you can, help people understand how we got to where we got to. And we're not all richy, we're all poor, but we're not as equal as we should be to our counterparts. We're just not. So hopefully that some of that will be taken care of one day. All right, guys. So let's just go ahead and we're going to stop right here. But I hope you enjoyed this episode of Let's Talk with Carl E. Long. until we meet again, thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful day. Bye now.